All right. Good evening, everyone. We're so glad that you've joined us. I am Misty Allen, and I am one of the specialists with the DCPS Gifted Department. I am thrilled to introduce Erica Whitfield tonight. She is a licensed mental health counselor that has partnered with us for the last couple years to bring us some wonderful information about understanding our gifted students. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Erica. And I will be monitoring the chat box throughout the night. So if you have any questions about anything that you hear, need some further clarification, if you just want to put that in the chat box, and I will make sure that we address that as we go through the evening. So thank you so much. And Erica, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Misty. I'm going to share my screen here, and then we will start rocking and rolling. Okay, welcome, parents. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. We are going to be talking about understanding your gifted child. So I know you all have a lot of great questions. I can't wait to hear them. We're going to make this really interactive. And I'm going to make sure that I leave some time and space for us to answer those awesome questions that you have. All right, a little bit about me. I'm a licensed therapist with about 15 years of experience providing therapy to primarily children and adolescents. I specialize in helping gifted, creative, and high-performing kids manage their stress and anxiety, and I'm a founder of Positive Development, a therapy practice right here in Jacksonville. I also write some awesome parenting articles for the Jacksonville Mom. That's a great resource if you want to check that out. Been on several podcasts that talk about children and adolescents and the gifted, and former member of the Florida Association for Gifted Children. So really quickly, this is just an idea of the type of gifted, creative, and high-performing kids that usually come to see me for therapy. We have our creatives. These are our kids who are skilled in things like music and dance and art and engineering. They are very flexible thinkers. They think outside of the box. We have our academically talented kids. These are our kids who usually are in advanced classes, they're in AP classes, they're in IB programs, and they really have a high motivation for just succeeding in school with their academics. And we have what I like to call our change makers. These are our kids who love to champion for fairness and justice. They question authority, and they're going to go on to do really cool things in our world for social justice and change. All right. So about 75% of the kids that come to see us have been classified as gifted, and the other 25% are high performing and creative. And so I want to pause right now and dig a little deeper. Parents in that chat, go ahead and let me know, what are some of the concerns or questions that you have for your gifted children? Let's take a minute and just go ahead and start putting those in the chat. What questions or concerns that you have for your gifted children? I think while you all type into that chat, I'll kind of go over some of the common questions that I usually hear, which are, my gifted child is giving up easily, and what can I do about that? Or my gifted child is struggling in school, but they say everything's fine, nothing's wrong. Or my gifted child doesn't want to accept help. My gifted child thinks very rigidly, and it's difficult for him or her to adapt to change or to transition. We're going to deep dive into this then, because this is what you need to know.
Yep.
Parents. So I'm actually really excited that you haven't seen this yet, because many of your questions that you already put in the chat, or your comments or concerns, you're going to get them answered just by understanding the 6 different types of gifted kids. So if you were not aware, there was research that came out in 1988 from Betts and Nyhart, and they discovered that there are actually 6 different types of gifted kids. And you're looking at those 6 types in front of you. We're going to go over these a bit. Our first type, and the reason we're going over these is because we can't just lump all gifted kids into one box. The anxiety that your gifted child is experiencing is most likely related to the type of gifted student they are. So the more that you know about their specific type, and there could be a hybrid of types, the better equipped you're going to be able to understand how to address their anxiety. The more you're going to be able to understand their unique perspective, even more so than just the blanket of they're gifted. All right, let's dig into these 6 different types. First, we have the successful type. Now, the successful type is usually highly focused on academics. They strive to make really great grades. They are the perfectionist. They may be overthinkers. They may fear making mistakes. They may be people pleasers. It is very difficult for them if they run into an obstacle that may not come easy, because for most of their lives, they may have been able to understand things with ease and to make great grades with ease, to perform high on standardized tests with little to no studying for some of them. So our successful type students can really experience anxiety from fear of failure, fear of making mistakes, fear of not being perfect, or fear of disappointing themselves or others. Now, the autonomous type is more of our independent thinker. The autonomous type doesn't like to follow the rules. The autonomous type likes to make the rules. So these are our kids who are not afraid to challenge authority. They may question their teachers. They may want to change the assignments and not do the assignment the way that it was stated to them. These are our kids who may grow up and become our entrepreneurs. Now, any group can become an entrepreneur. Any gifted type can become an entrepreneur, but these kids in particular are very independent thinkers. They are usually highly involved in a lot of different extracurricular activities, and they seek out learning experiences for the joy of learning. I had one kid recently wanted to do the IB program, didn't even care about the perks of the IB program, just wanted to do it because of the love of learning that he was going to experience from it. Drove his parents crazy because they were like, what are we getting into? And you don't even care about the benefits of this. And he had no plans on even going to college afterward, but he wanted to do the IB program. So our autonomous kids are, they really like to explore their love for learning. I actually have a quiz. You can contact me and I'll send it to you. You take this quiz and it'll tell you how much of each type your child possesses in each one of these 6 types. It's really cool to check out. You can learn a lot. Our challenging and creative type, these are our kids who are into the arts, dance, building, coding, creating, writing. It's really about the flexibility of thinking. So they can step outside of that box. They don't have to be rigid in the things that they do. And I've noticed that our challenging and creative kids, they really lock in on a passion. You know, our autonomous kids will move from thing to thing to thing: soccer, basketball, hockey, football, French, Spanish, Greek. But our challenging and creative kids, it's almost like they've locked in on their life passion. You know, I want to dance, I want to be a dancer, or I want to be an engineer and I want to code. You know, it just seems like they have a bit firmer identity on what it is that they want to put their energy and focus on. So that's our challenging and creative. You know, these are our kids who are going to the schools like La Villa, you know, for the arts. They really are dedicated to their craft. Then we have our twice exceptional gifted child. Now, these are gifted kids who are gifted, highly intelligent, but also need extra support. So they may have a gifted plan and an IEP plan or a 504 plan. Perhaps they have a learning issue. They're gifted, but maybe they're gifted in math, but they have a reading disorder. Maybe they're highly gifted in science, but they perform below standards in math. And it's really difficult for these kids in particular because it's confusing. They don't understand why they're able to do so well in some areas, but not in others. And so stressors for them are just being accused of being lazy, because sometimes we'll look at the twice exceptional and we'll say, hey, when you really put your mind to something, you succeed. So if you're not doing great in math, that's just because you're not trying. Well, no, it may be because they have a legit math disorder. And let's go back and talk about some stressors for the autonomous. We kind of skipped over that. With the autonomous, your stressors that are going to lead to anxiety are going to be rigidity, feeling like they have to just follow strict rules and not having any ability to have choice. For our challenging and creative types, a lot of the stressors I see with them are just time. They are so focused into their special interest and their talent that things like school can feel like an inconvenience and something that's taking them away from their life passion. Our dropout risk, or I nicknamed them the exit makers, These are the kids who don't feel they're gifted. They don't feel connected to the system. They may not have strong positive relationships with their teachers or the kids at school or even their own parents. They may come from homes where, for whatever reason, education is not prioritized. And so they may do things like decide not to go to college because they're going to start their own business. Now, on the other side of that, they can experience a lot of stress and anxiety if they just kind of get stuck and don't know what direction that they want to take. So they know that they don't want to take this traditional academic route, but they don't know what they do want to do instead. And so our kids here, they can go on to start a business, or they can turn into what's called the trying to launch group. And with our trying to launch kids, they may not go to college. They may still be living with mom and dad after high school, and they may not be working, and they're just trying to figure out what their next steps are. And that can cause a lot of stress and anxiety for everyone involved, because parents want to see their kids grow and succeed, and they don't feel like that's happening. And that's a lot of pressure on them. Finally, we have the underground, and these are our kids who intentionally hide their gifts and talents. We usually see this when the kids start to get a little older. The boys may start to get more into sports and not prioritize their academics as much as they used to. And the girls may just want to fit in and not seem weird. That's a word that gets said a lot. I don't want to look weird. I don't want to look like I'm the one that stands out. I'm not like anyone else. And so they go underground with their gifts and talents. They may just not want the hustle and bustle and the extra work. Maybe they just want to relax and do their standard classes. They don't want the extra attention that comes with being considered gifted. I see these top three usually kind of go together often. I see a lot of successful autonomous combo types. I see the autonomous and challenging creative combo types. And parents, what you'll see is that, those top three, the successful, autonomous, challenging, and creative, these are the ones that can usually get by in school with little to no issues when it comes to like behaviors. Less so when you have an autonomous child who's in elementary school. They actually can be quite the firecracker. Mm-hmm. But the successful, autonomous, and challenging and creative, they can usually make it in school and be fairly successful. It's our twice exceptional, our dropout risk, and our underground that may struggle a bit more. But it all just depends on your child and how their stressor is impacting them, on their individual level. Okay, so that gives you an idea of these different types and what they may be experiencing.
Yeah, one thing I want to add too, Erica, because we have multiple parents commenting that they have the successful child or the creative child, but gets in trouble because they finish their work quickly and then they're bored.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so for that, we're thinking about how can we provide this additional stimulation because they're asking for more and they're craving more. So what can we do to make sure that they get that so they're not sitting there bored? Because when they're bored, that's when the issues start. That's when they want to start talking or maybe going around and helping people with their work. So these are all very important concerns that you're bringing up, parents. Okay, now I wouldn't be doing this presentation justice if I didn't do a head nod to the term neurodivergence. So neurodivergent is a term that really didn't, to my knowledge, exist when I first started in this field. And it's basically describing our kids whose brains process or develop differently from what is considered the norm. Our neurodivergent kids, they can have very powerful strengths and unique differences, but they can also have very unique stressors too. So these are our kids who may be gifted, but also have ADHD, autism, social difficulties, what you parents were bringing up before, difficulty following instructions, staying on task. They can have sensory issues. And in school, these things can be seen as disruptive, but really it's just our kids with different needs. So, one thing with our neurodivergent kids is they often feel like they need to mask and act differently so that they can fit in and not get into trouble, but that's a stressor as well. And when you've been trying your best to mask all day and then you come home, you can crash, or you may crash at school because you're not able to just kind of show up as your natural self. You're having to hold it together when it is extremely difficult to do so. So just to talk a little bit more about that, With our neurotypical kids, they can usually handle demands like transitioning from their favorite activities with ease, being repeatedly told to do things that they don't want to do, navigating social issues with other kids, or even being reprimanded or redirected. But our neurodivergent kids, imagine there's a battery. So look at the pink side where we have the battery of our neurotypical child, and it just kind of slowly kind of drains over time. We wake up, we go to school, we do our work, we interact with the kids, we come home, and we might have a drained battery by the end of the day. With our neurodivergent kids, that battery can be zapped very quickly. By the morning time, something can happen that can trigger them to zap that battery, and then they're done. And this is because of the nervous system. Their nervous system of a neurodivergent child is constant. It can be constantly overloaded. So they may be irritated from the sounds that they're hearing. They may be irritated from the bright light. They may be irritated from some kind of sensation that they're experiencing with their clothes or having to sit still. It's constant sensory input that they're taking, and so it decreases their tolerance level much faster than the neurotypical child. So I'm saying this to say this is also a major reason why some of our gifted kids who are neurodivergent also experience issues. We also have the term asynchronous development when we think of our gifted kids. And with asynchronous development, there can be a mismatch of their cognitive, emotional, and physical development. So for example, as you see here, you could have a first grader who is testing at the grade level of a third grader in most categories, but emotionally, they're at the level of a kindergartner, and maybe physically, they're not as developed as a typical first grader would be. So this is another stressor because you're looking at this first grader and you're like, oh, she's so smart. Surely she has the maturity of someone a child much older. Not necessarily. She might actually have the maturity of a child much younger than her stated age. So this is also something to think about. All right, any comments in that chat there?
Yeah, we've got some parents who definitely agree with what you're seeing. They see that in their child. A parent commented that I see that my son is neurodivergent, but frequently gaslit by various providers who thinks he can't be because he's so academically advanced. So that would be that asynchronous development where that adult just maybe doesn't understand how gifted students develop differently.
You got it. You got it. Now, people are starting to get better and more aware and more educated about neurodivergency, but there's still a lot of folks out there, even therapists, who don't really know what this term means. So as parents, really get out there and advocate for your children, educate people about these things, because from my experiences, when I can get this information out to teachers, out to the schools, out to parents, understanding makes it so much easier to work with because you know why it's happening. It's not our kids trying to be disruptive. It's just they have different needs that we need to tend to, and we need to help them figure out how to tend to. Okay, a few more terms. We have hypersensitivity. This is the exaggerated response of the immune system. So I'll give you an idea of what that might look like for a gifted child. Let's just say we're in a room, it's well lit. Well, for a neurotypical person, that room, it might just be fine. But for a neurodivergent person who's sensitive to light, it may feel like that light is blinding them, and it is a very uncomfortable sensation. So that's an example of hypersensitivity. Then we have hyposensitivity, and I can't tell you how many times that I'll have a kid come in who's been diagnosed with ADHD, and they have hyposensitivity. So they feel like they're just tapping you on the shoulder, but to the neurotypical person, it feels like they're punching you, and they don't realize that because of that hyposensitivity. It's a low level or absence of sensory feedback. They're not feeling sensation as intensely as the neurotypical person, so they've got to do more. They've got to push more, they've got to feel more, they've got to touch more intensely, in order to get the average sensation that a neurotypical person could get. So when your child slams down that fine china on the dining table, they're not trying to be reckless or irresponsible. That could be a sign of hyposensitivity. If they're squeezing their brother or sister or classmate so tight that it's making that other child extremely uncomfortable, our kid might not, it might not be out of silliness or out of trying to be disruptive. It might just be hyposensitivity. I don't feel that hug sensation as intently as the neurotypical person, so I've got to squeeze much tighter to get the same sensation. And parents,
we have a parent asking if you can be hypersensitive and hypo. So hyper and hypo at the same time.
Absolutely. And that parent sounds like they have a great example to share. So if you want to put that in the chat, parent, please do, because I would love to hear about how hyposensitivity shows up in your child and how that hypersensitivity shows up too.
Yep. So they actually already put sensitive to loud noises at times, but also makes loud noises or pushes hard.
Got it. Wonderful example. Wonderful example. So yes, it can, both of these concepts can show up in our kids. So again, all things just to be aware of. And here's just a quick summary slide here. If you're hypersensitivity, you might need, if we're trying to help our kids regulate their emotions and decrease their anxiety, we might want to do things like have more quiet spaces available for them, more downtime for them to rest and take breaks, more physical space from others. A hypersensitive child may not want to sit very closely to other kids who are moving around and accidentally touching them. And, it can feel very suffocating. Lower lighting, lamp light instead of high overhead lights. It's so fascinating when kids come into the therapy room with me. Some of them love the overhead light that you're seeing now. And then some of them are like, oh my gosh, that is so bright. And I have to turn off the overhead light and turn the lamp lights on. I myself love the lamp light. This constant overhead light would drive me insane if I had to have it on all day long. With hyposensitivity, we want to do the opposite. We want more movement. We want more visual and auditory stimulation. We want more opportunities to be social with others. So how many times do we tell the child with ADHD, stop talking, you can't talk right now, no talking. Let's make sure that we have as many opportunities as we can to allow them that space to get that energy out and release that energy, to talk, to socialize, because they need it to regulate. All right, and then last term I'm going to throw at you until we dive a little bit deeper, and then we'll take some questions, is executive functioning. So I want to tell you parents, and this is something I am just now learning, to be totally honest with you. I have been studying this for about a year now, executive functioning. Many parents have some of the concerns that you all stated earlier when I first asked, what are your concerns? And there's this idea that you can just take your child to therapy and talk things out, and then the executive functioning will enhance itself. Executive functioning are cognitive abilities that help us like regulate our emotions, get organized, focus on tasks, start our homework, stay focused on our homework, organize the things that we have to do, plan for projects that we have coming up, all of those different things, know what's due. That's executive functioning, basically organization and emotion regulation, if we're going to kind of chunk it down into one or two descriptors. But if your child is struggling with emotional regulation, then yes, therapy alone may be fine to enhance their executive functioning. But if they're struggling with getting organized or just starting on their homework when they don't want to start on their homework, or there's actually can be up to 13 plus different executive functioning categories, you want to really find a therapist that can help you not only with just the emotion, but with the hands-on strategies that can help them build their organizational skills. So keep that in mind, because I've seen over time so many parents get frustrated because they've had their child in therapy for so long, but the child's still not organized. Well, we can talk all day about your thoughts and feelings, but if I don't show you how to use a calendar and how to plan for the future and how to go into focus and check your grades, you're still probably going to be disorganized. You're just going to be a happier, disorganized child. Okay, so we want to, if your child is struggling with any of those things, find someone who can help you with mental health therapy and executive functioning. That is just as important, and that is why we're doing a lot of that now. Any questions so far?
We have a parent asking for suggestions to help a hypersensitive child that needs movement and socializing with others, but they're being told to hold still and not speak in class.
Yeah, what I like to do in those cases is just reach out to the teacher and just first advocate for the child's needs. I say, hey, this child has hyposensitivities, and this is what that means. And I understand that they need to focus in school and they can't distract other kids. But teacher, what can they do? So you can offer some suggestions yourself. Think about what your child likes, but I like to match up the suggestion with the need. So if my child needs to move around, the redirection really doesn't need to be go color, it needs to be move around. So ask your teacher, he really needs to move around sometimes. What is acceptable movement for you in the classroom so that you can still teach and the other students can still focus, but he can still move? So try to open up those conversations and see where that goes.
Yeah.
If that doesn't go,
yeah, I was going to say many teachers will let the students just stand in the back. It's getting them behind the other students that need the quiet and stillness to focus. You have to get them to a place in the room where they're not distracting to others, but they can still move and be successful themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so difficult. Hey, teachers are amazing. Think about the fact that they may have a handful of kids in that classroom of hypersensitivities, and they may have a handful of kids in that classroom of hyposensitivities. So the teacher can send the hyposensitive child to the back to maybe do some jumping jacks or something, but the hypersensitive kid is like, what is that movement?
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's really hard. But if you just go in with, openness and receptiveness and just a desire to try to make this work, you can usually come up with some kind of plan.
We've got a parent asking for how do you get their child used to an app where it actually helps them? How long do they need to use it before it becomes a habit?
Oh, that's a really good question. Every child is different. So it's really just going to depend on how long they need to use it. Some may pick it up right away and say, okay, I've got it down. I don't need to use this app. And it's only been like a few weeks or so. I think typically you want to try to do this for at least 30 to 60 days before something becomes a habit. Like, it usually takes about 30 to 60 days. And for kids, it might take a little longer depending on their age. So the big thing is to not get discouraged if something doesn't work right away. And that's what I see with a lot of parents. Like, we want things to work yesterday. And the reality is, if our kid gets that app and just opens it, that's progress. Congratulations. Okay, now they're using it once a week. Good job. Now it's a few times a week. Fantastic. Now it's every day. All right, we have the habit. So you have to praise them for all of the small efforts that they're showing. Don't say, oh, well, you only use that app 2 times this week, so you're not really serious about it. No, we have to build the momentum over time. Good job for what you did do. And then maybe we can set a goal for how to slowly increase the use of that app next week. You did 2 days this week. Let's try for 3 days next week and see how that goes. Slowly build it up over time. So email me and I'll have my email address on the last slide, and I will send you all that gifted resource manual.
Okay.
The last thing I wanted to say about that executive functioning piece too is that there's something called body doubling, and we're starting to do that here at our office as well. This is really great for our kids who struggle with getting started. And body doubling is just working alongside with your child. You don't have to speak. You don't have to say a word. It's just You have your reports from work. They have their homework problems, and you two are just sitting there silently using the Pomodoro timer and getting things done. That can be really helpful. The quote that just came to my mind was, we become an average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And what that means is that who we spend time with influences us. So if our kids are spending time with us and we're working, that it's a motivating force, and that presence, just being there with them, can be really reinforcing for them too. It's comforting, you're not doing it alone. You have somebody next to you who's also working, who's also trying to achieve and be successful at something. With our successful, autonomous, and challenging and creative, a lot of their anxiety is going to come from things like, people expect too much from me, or I feel like I have to be perfect. I can't make mistakes. I have to figure this out on my own. I'm going to burden other people. I feel stress and anxiety because of all these things. With our twice exceptional, underground, and dropout risk, the feedback loop going through their minds is usually, people don't understand me, or they think that there's something wrong with me. I'm feeling judged. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling inadequate. Okay, now I'm going to disconnect because people don't get me. And now I have anxiety and pressure to change who I am, So let's deep dive, like Misty said, into that twice exceptional. Twice exceptional. Here's an example. Audrey excels at anything related to math. She competes in math competitions and loves numbers. Audrey's math scores indicate that she is 2 grade levels above most students in her district. However, she significantly struggles with reading. Her teacher thinks she's being lazy or not applying herself enough. She's so smart in math. Why does she struggle so much with reading? Audrey often feels misunderstood while in school, and she has also been diagnosed with ADHD, so it's hard for her to focus. So this is an example of how twice exceptional could show up in a child. So our strengths, they may exceed grade level in some areas. They may have the ability to hyper focus on things. You usually see enhanced sensitivity with the twice exceptional group. I've also noticed that this group can be extremely witty, biting humor, and curious and creative. Some of the vulnerabilities are, this is the group that may struggle with that asynchronous development. They may be easily overstimulated and have issues with self-confidence. So when we think about how to support them in school, what we want to do is make sure that, make sure that not only do they have an IEP, because we're probably, as teachers and parents, going to do that IEP first, because we tend to focus more on where is the problem and we need to address the problem, and that's great. We do need to do that, but we also don't need to forget about the gifts too. So make sure that there's also some kind of support in place to highlight the talents and skills that your child does have, so they don't think that you're always focusing on their lack of something. Lots of times their vulnerabilities can outshadow their gifts. Educate teachers about your child's unique characteristics. Don't assume that your teacher knows what neurodivergence is. Don't assume that they know what twice exceptional is. You got to go in there and educate. And I love doing all about me pages, where you put a picture of your child on that page, and it's just like a Microsoft doc that you put together. My child loves, teachers do the all about me. Have your child doing all about me. My child loves this. My child's needs are this. If my child is hugging another kid too tightly, they are not trying to be disruptive. That's their hyposensitivity. If my child is talking too loudly, they just need a gentle reminder because they have a hyposensitivity. They don't necessarily realize how loud they're being. So educate the teachers, and then there's a greater understanding and supports can be put into place. We want to avoid placing excessive pressure on your child to meet grade level expectations. Yes, we can encourage growth for our kids, but you wouldn't look at a tree, and yell at the tree to grow, or fuss at the tree to grow, or put the tree on punishment because it's not growing as fast as you want it to. So let's not do that to our kids either. Let's set realistic expectations for them as they slowly improve in the areas that we want them to improve on over time. For home with our twice exceptional, Make sure you're discovering school opportunities that they can participate in, outside of school, in school, outside of school. Make sure that they have these outlets where they can show up and just feel confident about who they are, and connect them. The school day may not be enough. So in the areas that they need more help, try to find those tutoring services, therapy services, so that they can work on increasing their happiness and confidence, those executive functioning skills that they need to put into place. And avoid comparing your child to other gifted students. There is nothing more triggering than a twice exceptional child who's gifted and has a learning disorder when they are surrounded by the successful type gifted students. Because the successful type, a lot of that stuff is coming to them with ease. And so our twice exceptional child is like, why am I so different? I'm gifted, so I'm supposed to be really good at all these things too. And we don't want to compare. We just want to say, hey, we're all different. We all have strengths. We all have vulnerabilities. And even the successful type has vulnerabilities. Now, the successful type puzzled me for so long. I am literally just now feeling like I'm mastering working with the successful type in therapy. And I'll tell you why. Because it is so hard to get the successful type into the therapy office. The successful type, like we said, is used to kind of mastering things. And so one, they don't want to admit that there is an issue, some of them. Two, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing because they think that they're supposed to be on this all-knowing pedestal. And once they finally hit like a developmental period or an obstacle that's difficult, they can give up really easily. So here's an example. In class, Madison is often excited to turn in her work and get her graded assignments back from the teacher. She knows that she is an excellent student and usually makes all A's. She participates in advanced programs in school, which can be very competitive. Madison is adored by her teachers. They appreciate how well she can follow directions and stay on task. Madison sometimes struggles with perfectionism. And really, if she's a successful type, it's probably like Madison oftentimes struggles with perfectionism. So our strengths, they usually make pretty good grades, perform well on tests. They're in these competitive settings. Teachers usually love them. They're self-directed. You usually don't have to tell this type to get started. They're already on it, unless they've burned out. And it is very dangerous when you have a burned out, successful type student, because they tend to think in all or nothing terms. I'm either a winner or I'm a loser. There's no gray. I either have an A in this class or I failed. That 89 is an F. It's win or lose. It's all or nothing. Very concrete thinking. The flexibility with our successful types can be very limited. So that's why you see things like the perfectionism, the fear of mistakes, the people pleasing, because they tend to think in extremes. I either got it or it's gone, So helping our successful types, this isn't even on here, but try to start getting them to think in those shades of gray. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. What's the middle ground? Try to work with them for the middle ground. For the successful type, we want to avoid overcommitment. These are our kids similar to the autonomous. They'll pile up a lot of things on their plate and then get really overwhelmed. And then they'll be upset with themselves if they feel like they're faltering in an area. Praise their effort over their grades. So if, they don't have the 110s that they want, point out to them how they're improving over time if you see improvement. Like, okay, I know you're upset because you got this 90, but look, you took this next test and you got a 92, so you improved by 2 points. Look, you took this next test and you got a 95. You had a 90 a long time ago. Look at how you're getting better over time. So you have to slow them down and show them those incremental milestones of how they're improving over time, and that effort is making a difference. It's not just show up, win, or go home and fail. It's a process. Got to teach them about the process of progress. And learn for fun and interest. So, you can see a lot of successful type kids who, school just becomes their life, and they may not have a lot of interest that they have the time to engage in. So try to get them to balance that out and have a little fun, if possible. Our successful type kids can also experience something called productivity guilt, and they get so enmeshed in this routine of constantly working that when they're not working, they feel guilty. and they feel like they're being lazy because they're not working, even if they already like completed all of their assignments. They still feel like they should be doing something, and it's difficult for them to relax. If you have a burned out successful type student, then that's something in itself. I mean, with a burned out successful type students, you'll have our kids who struggle to get to school. They can start having somatic issues. I see so many kids come in with headaches and stomach aches, nausea, vomiting. So it's about slowing them down. If they need to take a break, let them take that break, and then we'll slowly put a plan back into place for getting them back into that routine that they want to be in. So we want to encourage new challenges. And if it's a new food, it's a little child and it's a new food, you don't have to eat this new thing entirely. Just take a sample bite if you want to, or maybe I'll just put it on your plate and see what happens, and I won't even say anything about it. If it's a sport and they want to quit because they're not scoring goals, all right, stay in it for this many sessions, and then if you still want to leave, then you can. So just set those measurable goals so that you can get them out of that all or nothing mind frame. Balance productivity with rest and relaxation, and model ways to recover from mistakes. Find age-appropriate examples that you can give them of times when you made a mistake and how you recovered from that mistake. Let them know recovery is possible. It's not all or nothing. It's not you make a mistake and then life is over. It's you make a mistake, you apologize, you take ownership, and then you take action, and then you keep moving. Be very mindful that the successful type, when they begin to struggle, it's going to be if they begin to struggle, it can be very confusing, because in their minds, they may really think that they have everything under control and they don't need help, because all of their life that has been true. So it's hard for them to even recognize when they do need help. So if you see your child's report card come in and it's like failing grades and they're like, everything's fine, I got it, no, I'm good, I'm going to get it done, set some deadlines. Okay, you say everything's fine. All right, well then make sure it's to these standards by this date, or I will be jumping in whether you want me to or not, because they will say it's fine until they fail out, because it's overwhelming. And there comes a point where they just give up and say, oh, I'm out of time, all or nothing, I'm not going to try anymore, it's too late, I'm too overwhelmed, I'm done. So keep an eye on that and set some boundaries around that. Don't just settle for everything's fine and I got it, because many times, everything's not fine. I'm going to put my email address up here. It's erica@positive-development.org. You can email me. I will send you that free gifted resource manual. I'll also send you that quiz that you can take so you can see like how much of each profile type your child fits. And I just had an amazing time with you guys today. If you have any last comments in this last minute, feel free to put them in the chat, but reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you.